Hey, what's up everybody? Beat you with another video. Alright, so now it's time to react to something that's floating around that we know could be false, could be true, but it's relevant to the conversation that we've been having because of the topic at hand, which is the Brooklyn Nets, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and all of that. This is Kyrie Irving's side of things on this one. Essentially, the word that's floating around the internet is that one of the things that Kyrie wanted on his contract was the ability to only play 60 games or the maximum of 60 games in the regular season. And it was stated that he felt it was inhumane to play more than that. Inhumane is not good for the body. See, that conversation's been going on around the NBA for a long time. There are a lot of players who believe that their bodies are probably best not playing the full schedule. We know Kawhi Leonard takes that to a different level because every time he goes down with an injury, he's out forever. And seems to be healthy for the playoffs when necessary. It's one of those situations. Well, no, he ain't healthy for them either, now that I think about it. But that's a whole nother story. But the point is, there are guys out there who agree with that sentiment. And I don't know if Kyrie's one of those people who feel that way, but it's said that he does. So we're going to just take the topic for what it's worth, regardless of his alignment with it or not. I would say to any player that wants to play a minimal amount of games, that the only fair way to work that out is to have it come out of your contract and into someone else's hands. That's all it is. Just got to allocate the salary, the cap, to make that make sense. That's something that I would try to negotiate in the next collective bargaining agreement, to be completely and utterly honest with you. Instead of beating around the bush, we just continue to attack everything head on. There are some athletes that just flat out are not going to be able to play 82 games. Asking them to play 82 games means that they're not going to make it through the season. You can tell them to work on their conditioning. Maybe there's a result there that can help. But if for some reason those results don't help, it still stands that they're going to be fantastic basketball players so long as they only play a certain amount of games. We've seen injury-prone players over the years. We've seen it. They play great for short spurts and then they go down. It's a consistent thing with them. If the NBA played less games, they would be different tiers of players. So I think Kyrie Irving has enough evidence in his injury history to show that he's best when he doesn't play 82 games. I think that whether or not he feels this way, or whether or not the word that's floating around with his name attached to it is actually him or not, I have already put on this camera and said that I think that the teams that have wanted him to play a full season aren't exactly assessing who he's been his entire career. And you know, in the midst of them trying their best to get him to not take time off, and in the midst of trying to get him to do what it is they want him to do, I asked the question, has anyone ever stopped to look around and think maybe the time off has actually helped him stay healthy? Because when he does try to play a full season, he breaks something. You know, I always say there's a deeper wisdom to a lot of stuff, and it keeps bringing me back around to this same mentality, as to where just because something is in place and it looks like it makes sense, or just because something's in place and it feels like a benefit to you, does not mean that long term it actually does. Or just because you're being forced to do something doesn't mean that what it is that you're being forced to do shouldn't be something that you choose to do once you realize what all your options are. That's kind of how I look at this situation with Kyrie particularly, in regards to trying to force him to play 82 plus playoffs. I just don't think that evidence has shown us he's been able to. If he puts his head down and attempts to, he gets hurt. So him taking time off to do this, or him taking time off for that reason, or him taking time off for that reason, yeah, focus on the behavior if you choose, but maybe the removal of those games is what ultimately will keep him healthy. So I just think it's something to study. I think it's something to be open-minded about if you're the NBA. And I think it's yet another thing that the NBA is going to have to put its ego aside about in order to properly assess. And that's what the struggle is going to be for the NBA, in my opinion, as I'm watching what they're dealing with. There are a lot of little things that conventionally don't look obvious to us. And this is what I was alluding to yesterday in the video. I'm trying to make the words make sense to get this point centered. But the world is changing in such a way where various systems that we've been using to help us operate are now outdated because of how we operate as a people in the world now. So as we grow and learn to behave anew, so do the systems too have to catch up to that. I think the NBA is showing us that example within their system, and they need to be trailblazers on changing their system to fit what it is that they have to deal with, maybe before other, companies and other businesses and other facets of life figure that out. They're going to have to be the trailblazers for looking at what they do and changing it entirely to fit the way people now move. Because the rest of the world's going to have to do it too. It's just that we see it in the NBA in a glaring way to where they're going to have to do it before the rest of the world does, it seems to me. So that's what's going on here. They're still in the phase of looking at each other, both sides, the players and the owners, and they're saying, you're wrong, you're doing things the wrong way, we don't like how you're doing it, you're trying to hold us, you're trying to keep us captive. No, both sides are going to reach a eureka moment like I did last night, or like I did over these last 3 days when I was thinking about it. They're going to reach a moment where they realize that neither side is actually wrong. It's just that they're both trying to maneuver within a system that doesn't work anymore. And so now it's incumbent upon both sides to swallow their egos before coming to this conclusion, before they burn bridges that don't necessarily need to be burned for the presence of this misunderstanding. That's what I see there. That's why I'm calling on everybody to be like water. Until they figure out where they are, they need not be egotistical about what's going on, because the world around them has changed. You can know yourself, but if you don't know where you're at, you don't know enough. And if the world around you has changed, if the environment has changed, you can have all the confidence in the world in who you are and how you operate. But things around you have to be understood as well. You have to be able to be yourself in that environment as it changes. And so all my ways and my ego, and I'm not going to do it this way because in the old world, that's what I had to hang my hat on in order to keep my leverage. It's a new world now. Entirely different game. New set of things that need to be done in order to win in this game. And if you don't switch up what you're doing and you're still playing with the old rules, you're going to lose. It's no different than old players stepping into today's game and not adjusting to today's rules. They're not going to win. Okay? And you can have a conversation about them and they'll tell you how it was in the old days. And if you had a time machine to go back to the old days, they tell you how your new ways don't work for them. But it doesn't withstand the fact that if you're there, you got to do things the way they did it. And if they're here, they got to do things the way you do it. And with that being said, when we get into the future and we go forward, it's going to be like that too. And every one of these eras is going to have a strong argument for why what it is that they did is the right way. So with that being said, it's about doing things the way that it needs to be done right now, not necessarily discerning which way is best. You understand what I'm saying? And I think that's where people get lost in their conversations. My way is best. Yeah, that's cool, but we have to move this way right now. And so both sides need to come to the conclusion that the old way is done. There has to be a reinvention of ways in order for the functionality of this system to work. Period. So that's what's going on now. People haven't figured that out yet. Still mad at each other. And all in all, I just think that with this comes the full circle understanding of unconventional ways of making things work. Less games for certain players. Money comes out of their contracts and into other players' hands, unfortunately delegating the cap balanced, basically. Yeah. 4-year deals for some, not for everyone. Yeah, you still get your money, you still get locked up some kind of way, but it won't be structured in such a way that binds you to that team for 4 years and them to you at that price. Yeah, that can't stay. See, these are all things that you could argue we need to keep, but in presence of this environment, cannot survive. That's what I'm finding out. It just doesn't work. So, I don't know what the NBA is going to do in the short term, but they do need to be behind the scenes figuring out how to reinvent that system, contracts, all of it. They need to reinvent it, or they're going to continue to have these issues with players wanting certain things and owners not wanting to give it to them because of the presence of leverage. A leverage that would be reimagined in a new system, by the way. Yeah, reimagined entirely, I'd imagine. So, these are things to consider when interacting with people. You understand what I'm saying? This is something I've alluded to as well, but we have to maintain our morale and our rapport. We got to be able to maintain our ability to communicate, right? Because you and me are going to have to work together in a different system tomorrow. So if we've burned a bridge between us because we couldn't function in this system, it's going to carry over to the next system, and we're going to have different roles that we may be able to do, if not for the presence of the awkwardness that is created by being disingenuous within the system that is going to eventually no longer be. You see what I'm saying? That's why you stay civil. That's why you stay civil. That's why you don't let things get personal, because we're maneuvering within a certain environment, and that doesn't mean that we're always going to be in that environment. So this is the wisdom behind all of this, man. It's the wisdom behind all of this, man. I hope everybody is in a space in the NBA to just kind of get through it, man, because it's going to affect the product. It's going to affect what ultimately happens with the players going forward. And of course, if you don't have the players, you don't have the people. Because like I always tell you, I'm not watching owners run around. I'm sorry. The only owner I'll watch is Mike. I'll watch 60-year-old Mike run around with a cigar in his mouth. That's worth it to me. That's dope. Other than that, that's not. I don't want to see none of your owners. I don't. I don't. Unless y'all holding the trophy at the end of the year, or speaking to us in such a way that reassures me that you're going to do what needs to be done to make us relevant. That's really all. That's all I need from my governors. That's it. I need the players to run. And if y'all can't get right with the players, regardless of how different they may be, then you don't have a product. And so that's ultimately what it is, man. Get right with today's players. Don't fight them, ostracize them, and then try to replace them with guys that aren't as good as them. Because that's ultimately what happens when you push away the elite. Because you don't want to deal with them, now you got to go with the not so elite. Yeah, they may be more willing to be subordinate, but they're going to suck, and we're not going to want to watch them. Video 44. I thank you all for watching.